Hello and welcome to our program Where God Weeps. The Greek Catholic Church in Ukraine has suffered one of the 20th century's greatest martyrdoms. Liquidated in 1946, a catacomb church for more than 40 years, struggling for legitimacy through hunger strikes and appeals until finally official recognition. Today the Church faces a new challenge, a revival of faith and yet the lack of infrastructure, a renewal of vocations and yet lack of money with which to house and train these young aspirants. Let's watch now an excerpt of a film which shows us the history of the Greek Catholic Church and the challenges it faces today.
From the Carpathian Mountains in the west, along the northern shore of the Black Sea, to the foothills of the Caucasus stretches one of the largest countries of Europe, the Ukraine. For centuries, this fertile land, often referred to as the breadbasket of Europe, has been the object of conquest and a thoroughfare for commerce between the Baltic and Black Sea regions, a bridge between Western Europe and Asia. In 988, at the behest of the great prince of the Kievan Rus, Saint Vladimir, Christianity in its Byzantine form took root in the Ukraine. In those days, the Christian Church still considered itself as one and undivided, despite its evolution into various Eastern and Western traditions. This awareness allowed the early Church of Kiev to maintain friendly relations with Rome and kept it out of active participation in the subsequent rift between Rome and Byzantium. In the 13th century, Kiev was sacked by the Mongols. Neighboring nations divided the Kievan state among themselves. During the period of Kiev's decline as a political center, it fell to Western Ukraine to uphold its historical continuity. Meanwhile, the ascendant state of Moscow had adopted expansive political goals, which included using the Church as a means of becoming the exclusive heirs of the ancient Kievan state and, subsequently, even challenging Byzantium for the leadership of the Orthodox world. This threat, combined with the growing influence of the Protestant Reformation and the widespread moral decline in their own church, the Kievan bishops turned to Old Rome for assistance at their Synod of Brest-Litovsk in 1596.
Their intention was to protect and retain the Eastern identity of their church, yet they also hoped that renewing communion with the Apostolic See of Rome would help counter the threat of the Protestant Reformation, assist in the reform of their church, and bring its social equality with the Latin Church.
The renewed communion of the Kievan Church with Rome was vehemently opposed by the Orthodox Patriarchates of Constantinople and Moscow. So the history of what is now popularly known as the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church became a struggle for the right to exist as an Eastern Church in communion with Rome.
Господи, помилуй, Господи, помилуй, Господи, помилуй.
From the early 17th century to the outbreak of World War II, the Ukraine was invariably divided into two parts, a western part under the Polish state and an eastern part under the Russian Empire. The Russian Tsars had declared themselves defenders of orthodoxy and promoters of pan-Slavic unity, effectively a Russian melting pot for all non-Russian Slavs and Orthodox believers. Their main anger was directed against the Ukrainian Church in communion with Rome because it symbolized political and ecclesiastical independence from Moscow. Each time they gained control over a part of the Ukraine, they outlawed and persecuted this Ukrainian church. In the 18th century, 8 of 12 million Ukrainian faithful loyal to Rome were forced to embrace Russian Orthodoxy. Eastern Catholics practically ceased to exist on Ukrainian lands in the Russian Empire.
For over 300 years, this country was part of the Russian Empire. Later, with the Bolshevik uprising of 1917, it was not spared the bloody events that followed the creation of a totalitarian regime, one of whose principal policies was mass forced atheism.
Armed Ukrainian resistance to the Bolsheviks lasted until late 1921. Militarily outgunned, its fate was sealed. Unleashing a reign of terror, Moscow first installed a so-called Soviet Ukrainian puppet government and then set about the mass liquidation of Ukrainian intellectuals and the complete suppression of all national, religious and cultural freedoms. The wave of terror climaxed in 1933-34 when the communists decided to collectivize agriculture by force and rob the peasants of their means of livelihood. More than 6 million people suffered death by starvation in this Ukrainian Holocaust.
The Bolsheviks failed to create an aesthetic awareness, but they did succeed in destroying all moral principles and the people's feeling of self-esteem.
As soon as the Red Army acquired total control of Western Ukraine in 1944, the Soviet government immediately resorted to old Tsarist policies and began persecuting the Greek Catholic Church, the name given to the Eastern Church in communion with Rome. All Ukrainian Greek Catholic bishops were summarily arrested, tried under false charges, and deported to Siberia.
After the war, Stalin implemented a policy aimed at destroying the traditional identity of Western Ukrainian life. Anti-church policies played an important part in this program of Sovietization. It was not simply a policy of introducing atheism, but rather a concerted attempt to marginalize the Catholic Church by deporting the Polish population to Poland on the one hand, and on the other by forcibly incorporating the Greek Catholics into the Russian Orthodox Church, even though historically the two had never been united before. In 1946, a pseudo-synod took place. Not one single Greek Catholic bishop attended, because in fact it had been organized by the KGB as a forum to announce the supposed self-dissolution of the Greek Catholic Church and the automatic conversion of all Greek Catholics to the Orthodox faith.
Father Kostelnik opens the session of the Synod.
I declare our Holy Synod open, convoked to unite the Greek Catholic Church with the Russian Orthodox Church. I propose that the Synod should rule on the following matters. 1. To annul the provisions of the Union of Brest-Litovsk from the year 1596. 2. To separate from the Papal Church of Rome. 3. To unite with the All-Russian Orthodox Church on the territory of the Soviet Union. All those in favor of these proposals, lift your hand.
All participants of the Lviv Synod of the Greek Catholic Church unanimously accept Father Kostelnik's proposals.
The scenario drawn up by the authorities was supposed to portray the dissolution of the Church as an act of self-liquidation, as an act of voluntary unification with the Russian Orthodox Church. A special plan was prepared to achieve this. We now have access to documents showing how this was done. The Soviet authorities were able to find, let us call them turncoats, willing to collaborate with them.
A newly consecrated bishop is vested.
One result of the Greek Catholic Church formally being declared non-existent was the automatic transfer of all Greek Catholic property to the Russian Orthodox Church. Several years later, when the Greek Catholic Church ceased to exist, the authorities applied the full measure of Soviet repression, as previously applied in the eastern Ukraine, whereby churches were burned, demolished, converted into warehouses, and subjected to all manner of sacrilege. When a church was closed, the faithful made every effort to hide the more precious items like chalices, liturgical items, as well as valuable icons, wherever they could, including in their own homes.
Everything in the church was battered and broken. This icon of Mother of God was brought to me at night. God, what I did to hide it. For a while it was in the attic, then behind the wardrobe. The Mother of God stood over there. When someone came, they would not suspect anything, as it was well hidden behind the wardrobe. And even when they organized raids in the village, I would lock the house and run so that nobody would enter. I sewed a sack and hid the icon as best as I could. Nobody knew that I had an icon. Had they found out, they would have turned my house upside down and destroyed everything. The people who knew me did not betray me. It wasn't easy. My children were small. But The good Lord helped me and I was not taken away.
Але Боже добре, все мене, щоб так, що ніде я не попала, за ніщо.
Today we have the pleasure in welcoming to our studio Father Iwan Dacko, who was responsible for the international relations for the Greek Catholic Church and today is president of the Ecumenical Institute at the Catholic University in Lviv, Ukraine. Father Dacko, welcome. Thank you for being with us. Father Dacko, you have lived the life of itinerant. You've lived in Germany, in Italy, in Ukraine, in Austria. Do you think that God was preparing you for what was your role at the time, which was to be responsible for the international relations for the Greek Catholic Church in Ukraine?
Yes, I think this is true. My family was and still is very Ukrainian. We spoke Ukrainian in the family. My parents gave me a great love to the Church of the Eastern Rite. I was sent, my brother and myself were sent to Rome to study in a Ukrainian seminary, and then I had the honor to work under Cardinal Slipi, the great confessor of faith, who suffered for 18 years for the faith, and I was his secretary, and he introduced me to so many marvelous people and to the diplomatic world accredited to the Holy See. And then when the time came after Gorbachev took over the power, I was the person who prepared Cardinal Slipi's successors returned to Ukraine. That was Cardinal Lubachevsky, and then we returned to Ukraine in 1991. I was Vicar General of the Archdiocese of the Archeparchy of Lviv, and then Chancellor of the Patriarchal Curia, and as of 1996, I was responsible of the external relations of that church. And the main task was to develop contacts with the bishops' on the Catholic level, with the bishops' conferences, in the between the other Christian denominations, with the Protestant Church, especially in Germany, and also with the Orthodox Church of Russia, of Poland, of Belarus, and the Patriarchate of Constantinople.
Now, the Greek Catholic Church, some might perceive it as a stumbling block between, let's say, the Byzantine and the Latin, or the Orthodox and the Catholic worlds, whereas others perceive the Greek Catholic Church to be a bridge between these two traditions. How do you perceive the role of the Greek Catholic Church in healing these wounds?
We did use this term bridge until recently, but in the last days, Cardinal Huzar asked us to use the term mediator rather than the term bridge, because bridge has no life in itself. People walk over a bridge, and a bridge doesn't make a difference whether you go eastwards or westwards or whatever. Whereas when now you are a mediator, we intend to learn the West, as also to teach the West what the East is all about, and to teach the East what the West is all about. So we intend ourselves now as mediators between West and East, and to make it quite understood to the European Union, to the people of Europe, that the Byzantine tradition is an integral part of the European Christian culture and civilization.
The Greek Catholic Church was a catacomb church for over 40 years, and today we see a flowering of the faith in Ukraine. Can one say that in this regard, the blood of the martyrs were the seeds of faith?
Exactly. I think definitely what we are witnessing today is a boom of vocations and a constant seeking for human values. This church, these people have been very seriously wounded throughout, especially the last 70 years of the 20th century. But now there is a boom on vocations, and what we need now is to give them an adequate formation and education, starting from laity, but also clergy and also hierarchy. And ecumenism is an integral part of this. In the last 5 months, especially since starting of this from this Orange Revolution, things I think are going the right direction. We have a truly good president who cherishes Christian values, who is a convinced Christian, Orthodox Christian, and he has made it clear that the European dimension is the path to be followed by the Ukrainians. And within this European dimension, we see Christianity, our Ukrainian Christianity of the ancient Kievan Rus, as an integral part of the legacy of the Ukrainian nation.
Cardinal Huszar stated recently that he anticipated that the administrative center of the Greek Catholic Church would move from Lviv to Kiev. Now, this is also quite an event for the Greek Catholic Church. What is the significance and what is the intent of moving the administrative center to Kiev?
Cardinal Huszar explained the reasons very clearly last year in a very outstanding document of 13th of April, and where he said, I am returning to the original see of the entire Ukrainian Church. And we were forced out of Kiev under the persecutions in the 18th, 19th century, in the times of the Russian Tsars. We are now going back to that see. We are not willing to take over any Orthodox churches or to be any menace to whomever. But what Cardinal Huszar is intending to do is to get as close as possible to the Orthodox. The only thing he's asking the Orthodox to do is to pray and be in communion with the Bishop of Rome, and at the same time to maintain all the traditions, the entire structure of an Orthodox Church, and then we Greek Catholics would reintegrate in this one Christian, Orthodox and Catholic Church. And this church would be headed by a patriarch, by one patriarch, not Orthodox or Greek Catholic or autocephalous, but one patriarch who would reside in the Cathedral of St. Sophia. This is the ideal of all positive thinking Ukrainian Christians of today.
And yet at the same time, this initiative is not without conflict, in the sense that the Russian Orthodox Patriarchate, for example, has stated that this would set ecumenical relations back for decades. What is your response to this statement?
The official response of the Russian Orthodox Church up to date is always quite negative. But when you approach at least the lower representatives of the clergy, including some members of the hierarchy, then they are much more aware of this problem and much more positive towards this question. We have to really pray a lot towards this intention, try to be as objective as possible, and research the entire question in great detail. We need some time, we need patience, and I see the task of our Ecumenical Institute precisely in this sphere, to find the right people in the Orthodox Church, in the Catholic Church, who will seek the ways that unite us and not just continue towards the division. So let's not politicize this issue. Let's try to fulfill this command of our Lord that all may be one. And there's a sufficient platform today to start this work. And this is what I'm trying to accomplish with my institute as of today.
Now, Pope John Paul II said that now was not the time. When the idea was first initiated and proposed, Pope John Paul II said now is not the time. What is your feelings about Pope Benedict XVI? How will he consider this kind of a question?
Pope John Paul II also said that he knows this is our just and right aspiration, and that he personally would like to recognize this patriarchate. And I am certain that the present Pope knows of this wish. But at the present moment, the situation is as you formulated. We are not going to rush this issue. This is a very serious issue. We should not politicize it. By no means it means to we cannot understand it as a position of power, but it is the natural accomplishment, natural completion of a church, of an Eastern church. And this is, once again, the reason why the Cardinal is returning to Kiev to find the ways of a dialogue with the representatives, with the scholars, and with the people of the Orthodox Church. And I think we're going the right way. But once again, we should not rush this issue. And when the time will come, the Pope will definitely recognize the Ukrainian Patriarchate.
Father, you have had a long history with aid to the Church in need. You knew Father Werenfried. What was the significance of Father Werenfried and aid to the Church in need to the Greek Catholic Church?
Well, first of all, you must remember that Father Werenfried started his work in 1947. And right from the beginning, he helped our Ukrainian Catholics in the diaspora. They were also, like my parents, refugees from Ukraine. And he helped us in the West. When Cardinal Slipy was freed in 1963, he was the one who contributed, the Aid to the Church in Need, who contributed substantially to build up the Ukrainian Catholic University and the entire center we have in Rome. But today's legacy of Father Werenfried is still more important. Father Werenfried started his work by fulfilling the commandment of the Lord, love thy neighbor, love thy enemy. And today, one of the most important tasks of our people in Ukraine is to reconcile with one another. What has happened between Ukrainians and Poles in the last 5 years is an outstanding blessing of the Lord. And this is in the spirit of Father Werenfried. And now we should do the same with the Russian people, with the Russian Church. And of course, the help, the contribution, the fact that we are building the seminary and the Catholic University, thanks also to the substantial help of the Aid to the Church in Need, but the spiritual legacy of love thy neighbor, reconcile yourselves with one another, is the legacy I would like to see fulfilled in the Ukrainian Church. This is what Werenfried meant to me and means to me today.
Father, thank you for having been with us and for having shared your knowledge and your experiences. And we hope that the Greek Catholic Church in Ukraine will continue to flower and that the work of reconciliation that you have started will also bring blessings for Ukraine and for the ecumenical dialogue.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us on our program today, Where God Weeps. If you'd like to know more information about the history of the Greek Catholic Church, we invite you to consider the information presented at the end of this production, and we look forward to seeing you next time on our program.